My advice would be dedicating a lot of time, a lot of discovery and interview or whatever resource you can get to a great first product. Even before writing the first line of code, only having a big pain is not enough for a B2B enterprise opportunity. I decided to leave my corporate career and start building Arvo because of the confidence of the first product that we have designed, at least, right? We weren't building yet, but we were super confident that we had a product or a concept that would generate value. One of the things I question myself a lot, and I would suggest founders to also question themselves, is what edge I'm really creating with this product. If it's easy to build, it's easy to replicate.
Wow, it's amazing to have you here on the Latitud podcast, man. Welcome.
Thank you. My pleasure. Looking forward for this conversation, Tony.
Let's head right into it. So, man, you've been working in the healthcare sector for about 15 years. A large part of your family works on the healthcare sector. Why don't you walk us a little bit through the way you connected kind of your life's dots all the way to the problem you're solving with Arvo and Arvo's initial thesis?
Amazing. And I think the connecting dots reference is a great one, because I'd say what got me here was a combination of, random events of life, a bit of intentionality, I would say, and more decisions that I took that got us here. So just briefly about my background. So I spent almost 10 years of my career working consulting. That's where I started working in healthcare. In the beginning, not intentional. I was pulled into to a healthcare case in my second year at Bain Company. And then I was more intentional about working in healthcare and decided to build my career around healthcare. I'd say several reasons would lead me to that. So things around purpose and the feeling I got and the energy I got by working healthcare cases and issues. I felt proud of talking about the case with friends and family and so on. But also a lot to do with the opportunity that I saw back then. I'm talking about early 2010, 2012. There was all this fintech wave going on and all this digitalization and a wave going on. And healthcare was and still is an industry that I would say is a bit late into all these transformations. And we can talk later about why, right? But that's reality. So I was more intentional about putting myself into the healthcare track and building my career around healthcare. Then I left consulting to work for a broker, an insurance broker, B2B. It's a global company called Aon. I was responsible for strategy and new products there. Again, I decided to work. The decision of doubling down in healthcare was super intentional. But what I saw there and the learning that I had there weren't necessarily anticipated. So I saw industry with, little development, specifically the issue that we tackle around Arvo, which is payments and transactions. I saw very little development from back my first case at Bain. And I would say a need from the market for ways to get more precision, more consistency, more trust, more transparency out of these transactions. And the market not ready to offer that, right? I would say, so a combination of life events, the influence from my family. My wife is a physician, so I do some discovery and validation with her as well.
But that's convenient.
That's convenient. I'd say that's a competitive advantage. But in any case, so I'd say it's a sequence of life events, and at some point I became more intentional. Led myself to then I decide to leave the corporate road and start a digital native and AI native company to tackle the issue that we're tackling.
Before we get into your ideation process, why don't you describe what Arvo does in a few sentences, trying to keep it in, let's call it non-expert lingo, right? If you had to explain what Arvo does to your nephew, or maybe to a grown-up, but not an expert in the healthcare system.
Right. We say that Arvo is the infrastructure to process, to validate healthcare transactions. And by healthcare transactions, I'm referring, it starts on the pre-authorization for more complex events until the billing, right? And the payment by the insurer. All that requires a very technical and deep knowledge around both contracts and the healthcare element itself, right? The care aspect of this medicine and so on, the clinical knowledge for that. So basically, what Arvo does is the infrastructure that builds the data and the intelligence to be able to process all these transactions in a much more precise manner, and also in a much more efficient manner. So currently what happened, and the standard of the sector, is you have nurses and doctors making claim adjudication and auditing, often on paper, right? And as a consequence, a lot of things ended up not being properly adjudicated, a lot of waste, right? And human time and very time from experts, right? End up dedicated to this type of analysis and assessment, and believe, and we are showing that AI can do a lot of to the sector around these processes.
That's cool, man. Heading to your kind of AI and machine learning advantage in a bit. But let's move 3 years back. By the way, you've come a long way since we met, and then you just raised a great Series A from great investors. We'll talk about that later on. But we both met in 2022,
right,
when you had just left your job at Aon, and you were still structuring your idea. I remember you had a lot of clarity around the problem, like between 20 to 40% of the payers, of the insurers, losing money in fraud, waste, and abuse. I remember you had a great diagnosis, but maybe if you try to head back to that moment of discovery, ideation, what could you share with founders at that stage? What frameworks or advice you could share with people going through the ideation process? That, as you know, is the moment where we usually back founders with Latitud.
Totally. And I'm very, very thankful to Andres Lawson, who connected us. And I'm super glad that I met you guys, and you guys have been such great partners throughout this journey.
Thank you.
I would say both in more objective manners, connected with funds, connected with partners, clients, and so on, but also as an emotional support. I love the way the times that we chat and we talk about challenge that we have, and you yourself, Tommy, you're always a great partner, great sounding board, and I'm really thankful for our relationship and partnership. So going back to your question, basically my advice would be dedicating a lot of time and a lot of time and a lot of discovery and interview or what resource you can get to a great first product, even before writing the first line of code. And of course, I need to do a disclaimer here. I spent my whole career in B2B. Arvo is a B2B enterprise play, and I spent my whole career in B2B enterprise. So what I'm talking here, I think has a lot of to do and a lot of bias toward B2B business and B2B enterprise business. Perhaps other stuff might work in other setups, but I think super important to get to this first product that get the traction and so on. And the point I'm trying to make here is that sometimes I would say only having a big pain is not enough to a B2B enterprise opportunity. So you gotta make sure that you find the right angle. And for me, the pain was there, and the pain is there for decades. The whole sector knows the inefficiency that goes around healthcare transactions.
In Brazil and in many countries, in many markets.
In many countries. It's not a benefit from Brazil, right? All the road they face this type of challenge around claim adjudication, pre-authorization, so on. But for me, I decided to leave my corporate career and start building Arvo because of the confidence of the first product that we have designed, at least, right? We weren't building yet, but we are super confident that we had product or concept at hand that would generate value.
Let's double click on quickly on that. So you talk about product design, right? And of course, you had relations with some of the insurers, some of the payers, right? But like, how did you design that? Did you design that, okay, through discovery calls, I'm not asking the question for the audience here, like, did you design it with a few design partners or pilots? How do you go around that in the early days?
Great. So I had some experience, of course, in the sector and in this specific pain, right? So I wasn't coming from zero. So I knew a bit some of the pains and how things worked. I started being super intentional and dedicated on the Arvo discovery during my paternity leave. This was in December 2021. And basically we raised by mid 2022. So during all this time, I was talking to people from the market and basically from healthcare professionals and healthcare managers, both from payers, but also from service providers, from hospitals. I spoke to dozens of auditors that were doing this work, right? All this work led us to gain confidence about the concept of the first Arvo product that we did, which was the claim adjudication. The way we position it as an additional layer of validation to make it more plug and play and changing less the current processes. The way we design models to be able to navigate on the noise around the data and not needing the data to be 100% correct, because it never is, especially in healthcare. So we did several, and this was by design, right? From the first day. I say that we never pivoted Arvo. We have worked on until I'd say a few months ago, but we have worked on everything that we knew that we thought would work since day one. I don't want to sound arrogant here or pretend that we knew everything. Of course, we learned a lot along the way. But we were super confident about the concept of this first product. And this is the first product that got us to this point, right?
That's great, man. Two comments here. I would say, for sure, this is more relevant to enterprise than to B2B companies targeting SMEs or to consumer. But in a way, what you're saying is, and you could have found roadblocks and maybe you could have pivoted or iterated the products. But in a way, what you're saying is, we spent months sharpening the axe before going and trying to chop the tree. Totally. Which I think is interesting. At least until I get a product in the hands of my customers, or at least I raise my first institutional round, right? Which I think is a great input, especially for enterprise, right? Let's change the order here of the script a little bit, and let me ask you a follow-up question about enterprise sales, right? Once you had that product that you felt you were comfortable enough, and you felt was an interesting wedge into these clients, because I think that's another, in my mind, Arvo is a great example of, okay, we want to eat this whole cake, but how do we start slicing the cake, right? And finding that wedge. And that wedge was your claim validation product, right? Let's go back to enterprise sales. So when you had that first version of the product with which you were comfortable, how do you go about getting that into the hands of the customers? Any kind of insights you can share in terms of doing enterprise sales for SaaS products in Latin America, SaaS and eventually fintech, but initially more of a software product in Latin and in Brazil?
I would split these into two moments, right? So one is when the product's still not validated, right? And the other is when it's validated, and then it's all about distribution. The first moment, right, before product validation and client validation and word of mouth and everything else, of course, is 100% founder-led sales. So our ability to put our product to be validated, right, depended on our own network and our reputation as a healthcare professional or professional work in the healthcare space, right? I think depending on the industry, being able to create this trust when the product's yet not validated is super tough. They are requiring more and more immediate impacts, right? They don't want to bet on something that would generate value in, a couple of years down the road. They need to bet on stuff that they are really confident that can generate material value in the short term. And on top of proving and articulating and showing this capability, you got to have a reputation that will make people bet on you, right? So on top of this concept, you got to have the reputation that will make people bet on you. And of course, in the early days, we believe that they are betting on the technology, but they're betting on the people, right? And so they know it.
Your point there is, with enterprises, reputation is very important. Initially, when you don't have a company brand yet, the founder reputation is the best proxy. It's translatable into the company reputation in a way.
That's it. And ideally, it can be a reputation from other industries, other areas of work that somehow you are able to translate, right, and transpose to the setup that you're into the industry, into the setup that you are working. If it's around this industry or this capability, even better, right? So much easier for a marketing professional to develop a AI branding or whatever marketing product that they will sell to enterprise rather than anyone else trying to prove the value. I think this is super important, and I would just add another thing, which is know the industry, right? So again, healthcare is a space that the industry is suffering a lot with costs decrease. The insurers, right, the payers in the healthcare market, they've been struggling to break even. So out of the past 4 years, only last year that the health insurers, they were positive in terms of operating profit. The other 3 years they were operating at a loss. So the healthcare industry is looking for solutions that they'll be able to, again, to generate impact very quickly. This is also very important, and I would say that we can see this level of sense of urgency in several other industries. I would say that healthcare is a bit more intense because of the way the market is.
You were saying know the industry, and it makes sense to me. I'm curious to hear your opinion on this. Sometimes we see teams of people coming in with a fresh perspective, outsiders of the industry, which is interesting too. But I think the magic happens many times when you have an outsider and an insider, or two insiders too, right? But usually you need an insider perspective. That's what we learned throughout the years. In your case, the two of you were like coming kind of from the industry, but they were very different experiences.
They are very intentional about our culture, and one of our operating principles is, we call it an insurgent mindset, right? A challenger mindset. I loved what you said of having an outside perspective. It's a way to be insurgent, but I don't think that's the only way. You can foster this challenger and this insurgent mindset within the people from the industry. That combined with the industry expertise and the industry knowledge would generate, I'd say, powerful teams.
Well, yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. Let's veer off the healthcare sector for a bit, and let's double click on something I think you did pretty well, which I think is translatable for founders building across any vertical, which is kind of the hyperfocus question, right? That's another big learning for Latitud in the last 5 years, right? Focus matters, right? Again, we partner up with you guys since the pre-seed in 2022. And I would say from the early days, I saw especially you, since the beginning, very hyper-focused on execution, right? Could you share with founders, how do you go about cultivating that hyper-focus in practical terms? How did you kind of try to embed that into the culture, given you're juggling with multiple things at the same time, sales, products, tech, fundraising eventually? I would love to hear your framework around focus and the lack of it.
I gotta bring also Rafa's Chinoco name here because I learned a lot of that from him as well. So I spent most of my career in, say, in the corporate environment. Rafa spent building stuff from scratch, and he had a lot of lessons learned from Jim Past, from Alice, and companies that we are very inspired by. But yes, I would say that we knew from day one what would be our North Star. In terms of what we need to develop that would generate a big impact in the market, and that will be a huge competitive advantage to us. And this basically is our intelligence, right? When I mean intelligence, we can add the artificial component, the artificial word in the beginning of the phrase, the artificial intelligence, the intelligence, however we call it, or our ability to validate transactions in a superior way in terms of a precision and efficiency to the current market standard. So we optimized for the single KPI during all these years, and now see ourselves also prioritizing this North Star for many more years ahead. So these were clear to us. Everything we did was to be able to be the more precise we could in this validation.
What's the North Star?
So basically, it's the our ability to identify anomalies, right? No non-conformities. I don't know what would be the right term here in English, but excessive payments or errors and everything that doesn't belong to the bill, right? So these are North Star. This will be for years to come.
So the audience can understand as a percentage, as a ratio of total claims
of what we process. That's it. That's it. Perhaps this would be the focus in terms of products, right? The other thing that would add, and I think is also related to this hyper-focus topic that you mentioned, is one thing that we did since day one, and I recall the first investor updates that we shared that you definitely received. If you go back there, you're going to see a section saying hypothesis to be validated. We had 5 bullet points there that were the underlying assumptions for the thesis. And we were super transparent and super upfront about it because we knew opening up these hypotheses was a way for us to be focused on proving them, right? We gotta, since we put there for everyone to see, we needed to have the answers around them, right? So how we were progressing and validating or perhaps refuting any of those hypotheses. So I don't know, things like if we would be able to, once we developed a model for a given client, if this model would be plug and play to the second client. So this was one hypothesis. These models would all be scalable. And then we made decisions and took actions that would help us to validate this hypothesis. So one of the decisions that we did was we didn't have one pilot client. We had 2 pilot clients. And we were building for these 2 clients at the same time.
Which I love, because many times you see teams building for one client too deep and then can't translate. Yeah.
That's it. And you don't know, right? You don't have the proof that this would work in another client.
Exactly.
And we had 2 clients running parallel and we were building for both. And we were able to, often we had like a checkpoint for a client 1 and we were running to develop a new model for the client 1 that we believe would generate a lot of value. We did a checkpoint, we validated the value of this model, and then we plugged into client 2 and saw if this was able to generate value or not. And it generated. So I said, well, this is plug and play. This is scalable, right? We can transpose the value from one client to the other and so on. So I think this is also a good tip in terms of helping to keep the focus on the thing that really matter in order to prove the thesis for the market and for ourselves, right? I wanted to know. I wasn't fond about it because I wanted to know if this wasn't the case and if the assumptions that we had that were supporting the thesis were wrong. I wanted to know, not only to show to investors, I want to know the truth, right?
I couldn't agree more. And this is me talking here. Many times we ask founders, hey, are you comfortable raising a large institutional round of a couple of million before you validate the hypothesis you have in your mind? Maybe you develop them over the years, but you haven't tested them out with the demand, with clients yet. And so that's one of the attributes we see at Latitud in raising initially, let's call it a pre-seed round from smaller funds like us, K50 or angels, no? In terms of, okay, at the moment where you scale operations, scale sales, and raise institutional money, you have validated hopefully the 5 key hypotheses or a good number of them. That's great, man. So let's double click a little bit. You just shared a little bit about the intelligence piece, and you mentioned your models across different clients. I think you're quite an interesting case of a team that has built proprietary models on top of proprietary data in many cases, right? And I think that's quite relevant to some industries like healthcare or financial services, where you have these large enterprises with proprietary data. I think it would be awesome for you to walk us through how that looks like, and how did you start collecting that valuable data from the early days?
We are an AI native company, but we do different types of AI, right? We do the Gen AI, the hype stuff, but we also do the cringe stuff, the old school AI, machine learning, and often I would say rule-based algorithms, right? We work across, let's say, several domains in terms of data algorithms and AI. Brazilian healthcare transactions in general, we have one benefit, we have several attributes that vary across different countries, different markets. But in terms of Brazilian regulation, the transactions by regulation, they need to happen in a digital and a structured data format. It's an XML file with the fields and that gotta follow with the event, the code of the event or the drug or the material, the quantity that was consumed, the unitary price, the total price, and so on. So it's a bill like any other, but this data is already being exchanged in a structured manner, in a structured format. So we knew that for us to be able to generate a superior value or a superior result into this process, would need to be able to process this data very well, right? And be able to spot the anomalies and the inconsistencies. And this would follow in different type of channels I was saying. Sometimes can be more rule-based, sometimes can be more statistical, right? And probabilistic type of model. It also, in some instances, would have like a source of truth, like a contract to tell us what is valid, what is due, and what is not. And sometimes you would not. So would be pure, I would say, medical knowledge and healthcare knowledge to be able to...
Unstructured data.
That's it. We structure our intelligence, our product, into two components, right? So one is the foundational element of the product, which is basically our ability to process these structured data and convert these to a single language. So even though structured, there's a lot of variability across providers with the same insurers and across different insurers. So we needed to be able to interpret all this information in a single way, right? And harmonize all this data. And not only harmonize the codes, but be able to interpret what they mean, right? So we call it our taxonomy. So our ability to categorize and organize the healthcare information. Thousands of codes that are circulating. So this is the foundational element of our intelligence, right? And usually we say that we spend half of our time working on those. And then you have the agents, that's how we call them. They're not necessarily a GenAI agent, as people are looking at, but they're basically a set of models that run to be able to adjudicate a specific use case, right? And validate a specific use case. So there's a model that validates a given material is due, makes sense, right, to the specific procedure. So this is one model or agent to be more specific, more precise. And then we have tens of those, right? We have on operation, we have today a bit more than 40 agents looking for specific anomalies and errors and so on. And to do all that, again, I would say the core intelligence, the agents, the way I was calling it, they are all proprietary models. So this is all proprietary AI, as we put. But we do leverage a lot of Gen AI in the harmonization and categorization component, and also to be able to create models quicker. So
you're leveraging LLMs there from multiple providers to do that second.
That's it. It's an agent that create agents. That's how we call it. And also a lot on the data harmonization in the foundational components, as I was mentioning.
That's cool, man. Very cool. And I mean, you're humble, right? But if you ask me or us at Latitud, I think you said you do the boring stuff, but we think that at least in Latin America, but even in developed markets, that's still one of the most interesting uses of deep ML AI models. And again, healthcare, financial services, you're dealing with proprietary data. You cannot risk hallucinating. You're talking with very sensible data, and I think like
you have to have explicability. You have to have consistency and
traceability.
That's it. There is this concept around AI with rough-edged and sharp-edged problems. The rough-edged, they are more complex, they are nuanced, they have like several right answers. The sharp-edged, they are more precise, more sharp, right?
Exactly.
And Gen AI, they often work better for the first. Totally. And we are here dealing mainly with the second type of problems. That's why we need to combine different types of domains.
And of course, I think in a different vertical, I think of Hyperplane, but it got acquired by Nubank last year, a company of ours, doing something similar in if you want, personalized financial services. Very cool, man. And I know you're leveraging models also for automating interactions with clients and so on.
That's it.
That's very cool. So all of this brought you to a pretty amazing traction level, multiple layers, and to a great Series A just a couple of weeks, months ago, from two great investors and friends of us, Kaszek and Base10. It's one of the largest healthcare rounds in LATAM in this year and also in the last few years. I want to double click a little bit on that round, what that meant for you, but especially what does it open looking forward? What's the roadmap? How does it change things? I know you stayed in Brazil, and of course you stay helping insurers and payers in the short term, but how does the future look like for Arvo after this round?
Was for sure, I'd say, a great milestone that we tend not to celebrate too much in this journey because it's too long. There's a lot to be done. We haven't won the championship, not by far, but there are some points in the journey that we got to be able to celebrate and be proud, right, of milestones that we achieve. And I think this is definitely one of these milestones. We're super proud. Of course, this is a result of a combination of huge pain that we're tackling in a huge market, but more specific, I would say, an amazing team with a solution that showed huge value to the market. And the numbers that we have, they prove that what I'm saying. So again, there is the intersection here, which is the team, and this was praised by several of the investors that we talked to for this process. I'd say also a learning here, and again, I would praise Rafa here again, which is being super intentional and knowing that the talents that we bring are really the ones that are going to make or break, right? We as founders, of course, we have a huge role here, but we are super happy with the team that we have at Arvo, and this being recognized by all the investors, and we are super confident that this is the team that will get us to the next milestone. And in terms of what it brings to the future, for sure, we have a product that we say would be an irrational decision for a health insurer not to hire Arvo. But this is me saying, right, we need to be able to articulate that and prove that to the rest of the world. So we are super focused on expand the impact that we can have with our current solution and touch more and more health insurers and be able to, of course, have our products impacting their operations and their results as a whole. And we knew from day one that Arvo is a multi-product platform, right? We are not a single product company. We got to have several products, and we got to be able to validate the transaction as a whole. So today we are in, I would say, 2 or 3 touch points, but there are 5, 7 touch points for us to be at. And we are expanding, I would say, the coverage, the scope of what we do. And also in terms of intelligence, right? And also continue investing a lot in accuracy and the precision of the models that we run to be able that they are generating the most impact with the less pain, the less friction.
That's great, man. Tying up with one of your earliest answers, I think you always saw Arvo as a multi-products company, but you were really, really thoughtful on what was the initial product, what was the wedge, and how you designed that. And that's what we're seeing.
That's it.
Do you want to share any, I don't know numbers of revenue, but like maybe we have something on how you impact the bottom line?
So we want to increase the impact that we generate on clients. So for instance, once we partner with insurer, we increase the productivity of their claims operation from 25 to 40%. So this is basically how we increase the ability to spot these inconsistencies, right? These errors and often fraud, abuse, and so on. And this is super relevant to the clients that we engage, right? Remember that I said that the healthcare sector struggles, right, with profitability and so on. The 25 to 40% could be the difference between operating at a profit or at a loss. And this is basically the amount of impact that we have, and we continue, of course, to focus on expanding.
Amazing. And you're still in day zero. Cool, man. This is basically it. Last question. We always close. If you met a founder, and I'm sure you are meeting founders that are really looking up to you, even though you haven't won the championship yet, but you scored a good goal. If you meet a founder that is in day -1, that is trying to leverage real AI to start a company today, what would you tell them?
I just recall one of the things that I most talked about in this chat, which is your hyper-focus topic, but I will convert back to having a big clarity on how to start and why this angle is a winning one, right? And why you have on your hands the concept of a product that has the pass on several of stress tests. Don't believe that you're going to find the product once the airplane's already flying, because situations are tough, conditions change, you have teams to deal with, you have clients to deal with, you have investors, you have yourself pressure, right, of finding an answer when you are in the midst of this turbulence. So don't trust too much that you'll find the answer as the airplane is flying, and spend the most time you can before taking off. That would be one advice. And the other, since you mentioned founders that are building around AI, there's a lot of discussions around what is happening in venture capital in AI these days, right? It's a hype, it's a bubble or not, and so on. I usually say that I tend to be more on the conservative side. If you pick several entrepreneurs and founders, usually I'm more the risk-averse side when compared to other founders. So, try to be very realistic about stuff. So one of the things I question myself a lot, and I would suggest founders to also question themselves, is what edge I'm really creating with this product. If it's easy to build, it's easy to replicate, right? It can be a great product, generate a lot of value, but very little defensibility. So I think in this AI area, the defensibility is a challenge to everyone that's building. I think everything became easier, right, to build. So I don't have the answer. I don't know. I don't have a proper framework to think about it. But I would say to be very, conscient and intention about how am I creating edge with my product, right? Becoming my company valuable versus competitors might be, and challenges that might be coming in the future.
Valuable and sustainable in the long term. So have an edge, have real tech, build value, and make it defensible. Amazing, man. This has been amazing. Thanks so much for joining us. And again, you're in day zero, so it's been amazing to watch you from the sidelines, to be a small part of it. Keep going.
Thank you again so much for the partnership, for the time here in this chat. I always love to spend time with you, so thank you for that. Yeah, let's move forward. A lot to be done yet.
Amazing. Thank you, Papa.